This is RC.
This is Tyrone.
And this is Andrew.
This is Carrie.
This is Bridget.
And this is Allison.
Hey, welcome back to the Saints. And today, right now, the segment I'd like to introduce is the one we are doing with the Harrigans. Who are the Harrigans, RC? I'm glad you asked. We have on the Skype line our dear friends who are currently in Philadelphia.
Philly, PA.
The church in Philadelphia. Which one is that one? 7 golden lampstands. KALIL and Shea Harrigan.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, KALIL and Shea Harrigan.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
How are you guys?
Man, we are. Man, if we were any better, there'd be 2 of us.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't either.
Okay, so Shea and KALIL, about how old are you guys?
I am 32.
Nice.
And I am 30. And I am 36.
Nice. 30-something.
Noise.
You robbing the cradle.
Yes.
Okay, how long have you guys been married, and how many kids do you have?
I can see KALIL. He's having to think about it.
No,
We've
we've
been
been
married
married
for
for
about
nine and a half years.
Oh, that was in unison. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's what.
They know what
They are one.
And we have three boys.
Mm-hmm.
3 boys.
More
Welcome to the
boys.
club.
I know, right? Okay, so you got, how old's Zacchaeus now?
7?
We have Zach.
7.
Yeah. And Jaden is 5. And Christian is 8 months.
He is so cute.
He is. I love that hair.
My little ball of joy. He's the only one that looks like me, even though you guys didn't see that.
You keep saying that. I think she's just determined to have one that looks like her.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So how do we
guys.
know? How do we know the Harrigans?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, well.
I mean, because the last time we spoke with Brother Pete from Oklahoma City and Brother Tyrone and Sister Allison, I mean, we knew Pete too, but they had been built together with Pete for a few years.
Right.
And so how do we know these 2 whippersnappers on our other line?
Shea and KALIL, you want to answer that?
How y'all know us?
Yep.
He
Well,
said,
we
yep,
know,
then nodded to her.
we know the Babians and the Walters through the church in Gainesville when we moved down to be a part of the church there in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got a chance to spend 4 years of
Glorious.
bliss
Bliss.
Every
being built
moment.
together. And the Hardys, we actually just met you guys a few months ago. Well, no, we met you guys before.
No,
Was it when we had
2014
internet?
at Nashville.
Yeah, we met some, but got a chance to spend a little bit more time with you guys a few months ago.
Yeah.
In Austin.
When you guys came to Austin.
Yes.
Nice. All right. So if you guys, what was your early experience of the Lord? Like growing up, and then, even maybe the first few years of your marriage. What was your early experience with the Lord?
This is KALIL. My early experience was from as far back as I can remember, going to church Sunday mornings with mom and dad, local neighborhood church. And then from there, that was a church that was like the neighborhood's church. So everybody who grew up in my mom's generation went to that church on Sundays. So it was everybody. We were basically worshiping with everybody who were family or close friends.
Okay.
From there, at some point, like right before my teenage years, we kind of went to a mega church that was a little bit more modern, that was much bigger, that had a lot more ministries going on. And that was go to church on Sundays, sing in a choir, serve on the usher board, and then go to Bible study on Wednesdays.
Yep.
That was basically it for the most part.
And that church
And
was
for
in Philly,
me,
right?
I'm from Mississippi, so I grew up in a Southern Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
The typical, Sunday school, vacation Bible school, all the different types of committees, and being a part of the youth department.
Mm-hmm.
And in college was when I met Kalil, and and he introduced me to a mega church.
Okay.
And so that was my first experience with that. And then fast forward, as a couple in the early part of our marriage, we were a part of the mega church together, and then we transitioned to be a part of an online streaming church community. I guess you could say.
It was a physical ministry, but they were based out of the Bahamas, and we were
streaming.
Yeah, we were streaming because we were Philadelphia based at that time.
Right.
So you went to church in the Bahamas.
Brother, I was
Philadelphia.
tithing and everything.
Sure was.
Thank God for ETF, electronic funds transfers, because it worked for us.
That's awesome. Okay, so what was your experience with starting to question things and step out into something new?
For me, it was when I went to college and got involved with a much larger mega church that was within the African American community. It was based out of Atlanta, and they were internationally known within the African American community.
Okay.
Very well known pastor / or bishop at the time who presided over that ministry. But that I started getting involved my freshman year in college ministry, and I believe it was that going into my sophomore year in college I started to get involved behind the scenes, working in the summer times as an intern up at the church, and got chance to kind of see that the business side of institutional church, and a lot of the ugliness with with relationships. When going in through my freshman year, I was able to look at some of the ministers and the pastors down from the pew, but this time I'm getting a chance to know them and be in relationship with them behind the closed doors, and it was very ugly. It was very disheartening. So at that time, I started getting a huge bug, which was still wrong at that time, but for missional, being extremely missional. At that time, that ministry was very conference driven, but more from a perspective of profits. What type of profits will the conferences bring in? And I remember one Christmas break going home to Philly from Atlanta and watching that Watch Night service streaming online, and I remember watching it with my mom, and there was a video that was played, a year in review video, and 95% of the video was a highlight of all of the conferences that church sponsored or hosted that year, and they were using that as the success. That's how they gauged the success of the church that year. And that just set it just turned my stomach upside down. Yeah. And for me, I'm knowing, from somebody who's sitting in a pew, they're looking at it like, oh, salvation, souls got saved through these conferences and change happened. But me, working the operation side of it behind closed doors, knowing that the motivation and the goal for each conference was profit maximization, was looking at it from a different perspective, and it was just, I knew that there had to have been more of the Lord. He had a bigger desire, and I didn't. At that time, I was thinking that it was very missional. He wants to decrease the high school dropout rate in that part of town. He wants to decrease the homeless rate. So it was extremely missional. So that was when I kind of one of the first seeds that was planted for me.
And for me, it's really simple. There was during the time when we were a part of that mega church together, it was one day in Sunday service, I looked around, and I can only attribute it to the Lord. And I just realized that I wasn't truly and genuinely connected to what was going on around me. And since then, I'm not the type to fake anything. And so since,
I know.
and so I'm going to raise my hand in church when I don't feel led to do so. You know what I'm saying? Just because the people around me are doing it. And I don't know, I just didn't feel connected the way the people around me were connected. And that's when I guess you can say that seed was sown in wanting to see if there was more to my walk with the Lord.
Nice. All right, so you're starting to be drawn in a new direction, and what's the Lord doing?
Oh, for me, that went in from there. It kind of went to a conversation that I had with the pastor at that church about my thoughts. I kind of shared with him my thoughts on watching that year-end review video and what I thought. And he gave me an answer, and he was basically telling me that actually that, like, prior to our conversation that same day, he was coming out of a meeting where they were kind of talking about becoming more missional. But then everything else from there went downhill, whereas it was a lot of political talk. It was a lot of, tickling of the ears, and he was just trying to appease, my feelings, but I knew that there was nothing of substance behind it. So being very influential at that time in college ministry and being responsible for a lot of the college students coming, I felt like it was best for me to kind of back out quietly, because I was really confused. I knew that I still loved the Lord at that time, but I was starting to inside of me a disgust for the church, was taking root, and it was getting to the point where it was really unbearable. So I kind of just used work as an excuse. I backed out. Eventually, I left Atlanta, moved from Atlanta, and moved back to Philadelphia. And because that church was such, for lack of better words, a heavyweight in the spiritual realm and the African American community internationally, I was at that time, I was like, there is no other church that I can go to. That church set a lot of trends for a lot of other African American based churches. Yeah. So to me, that was the standard that a lot of other smaller churches and other churches of its peers were looking to. So I was very confused. I was like, I still love Jesus, I still love the Lord, but I hate church. And I remember the director of the college ministry at that time. He was my mentor. I remember sitting at work in Philadelphia, and I shot him an email, and I said, hey, listen, you're probably the only person who will probably understand where I'm coming from. And through that email, I was basically telling him how much I love the Lord, but how much I hate church, that I detest it. I detest what it looks like. I detest what it stands for. And he replied that he totally understands, and that, this book that he was going to recommend, he wouldn't recommend to everyone, but he felt like I was mature enough to handle it. And that book happened to be Pagan Christianity. And I'm an avid sports watcher, sports fanatic, and I think that when I first read that book, everything was on shutdown mode, and I think I digested that book, probably not even digested it. I went through that book, footnotes and all, probably in a matter of probably about 4 or 5 days.
Were we married yet?
Yes, we were married.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I remember coming to Shea like, hey, we're, because rewinding a little bit, I went from dropping out of the church in Atlanta during college ministry years and then transitioning to the online ministry to now reading Pagan Christianity.
So let me interject real quick.
Coming to Shea with excitement.
Right. Because before we get to that part, while he started backing away from the church, for me, I recognized that there was a difference in me not being connected to what was going on around me in terms of like the Sunday services. But Khalil left Philly and I was still in school, but I was heavily involved in the college ministry. And that was where I really have a heart for encouraging others. And that was where I quote unquote found that connection. So I continue to still be a part of the ministry there, mostly because of the relationships that I was having in people. So fast forward to me coming to Philadelphia, getting married to Khalil, and us doing the streaming online with the international church, and then him reading pagan Christianity and then bringing it to me.
I came running in the room like my hair was on fire.
Yes, I remember very vividly. He came running around the corner saying, "We're not going to church anymore." I was like, "What you talking about?" He is spitting all this stuff to me about what he's reading, and I'm like, who is Frank? And who is Frank Viola and all this other stuff.
When I say she scrutinized everything about the book,
yes,
she scrutinized the word "and."
I did.
Where did he get "and" from? How do we know this is accurate? Or "the"? What's the root word of "the"? How do we know this is accurate? And that was extremely discouraging because I'm on a spiritual high at the time after reading this book, and the most important person to me outside of Jesus was my wife, and I'm bringing this book to her in excitement, and she just slams it, And I think we try to read it together, probably, and we didn't get past the first page.
That's right.
And it was total dejection, but it was bittersweet, because of the information and the delight that was shown through the book, but it was bitter because of Shea's response to it at that time.
So basically what happened was he backed off, and one day I just picked the book up on my own just to read it, and within the first chapter or the first two chapters, it was like, oh my God, I don't know, I could see the disconnect that I was feeling. I was starting to understand why, because what I had been experiencing all this time in terms of church wasn't the true essence of what the Lord intended, and I've always been a seeker of truth and things being authentic. And so I realized then that that's what I wanted, I don't care how many of my years was spent being a part of institutional church. It didn't matter. I wanted what was real.
So from there, at that time in Shea and I's lives, we were still extremely missional. I was working in the mental health field at the time, and my mindset at that time was I want to do things for Christ. I was very social conscious, very entrepreneurial, and looking at possibly starting social businesses, all for the sake of the Lord. And the information, from pagan Christianity went to the background. It was second behind what I just shared being the number one priority. And I think it was probably a couple years passed, and we had a visit from two of our close friends who they are a couple, and they visited us. They were part of the ministry in Atlanta at the time. And they asked us just point blank, like, he asked, do I think it's wrong for people to basically attend institutional church? And what I shared with him was that's really between that individual and the Lord. But for me, that's just not in the cards for us. And he asked a simple question. This was 2010. This was January 1st of 2010. And he asked the question, well, if this is what you feel like is the Lord for you, why you're not a part of it? And
we just looked at each other.
The light bulb the light bulb went off, and it was like, dang, why aren't we a part of it? And that's when it was kind of like, you know what? Let me go in the back of the book. Let's fill out the information for housechurchresources.com. And at that time, I'm under the assumption that, organic churches are everywhere.
Yeah.
So back of the book saying, we're going to go meet with this organic church this week. And, I'm going to email them and get the address. And we didn't hear anything from House Church Resource, I don't think, for like a couple of months.
It was 3 months.
It was 3 months. And, it was kind of like,
a very quick turnaround.
It really is. 3 months is quicker than 3
technically
months.
it is kind of quick compared to people we know.
And when we heard back from them, it was regarding a conference, a threshold conference that they were having that year, that July in 2010. And I immediately signed Shea and I up to attend. And from there, I think I became aware of
Jesus Manifesto.
Jesus Manifesto. But prior to that, I think after reading Pagan Christianity, I did read Reimagining Church. So I did have an understanding of what, Guy's idea of church was and his thoughts was. But it wasn't until signing up for the conference, I read Jesus Manifesto first, and that blew me away.
Yes.
That opened up my eyes to seeing how my missional mind was primary to Jesus Christ.
I think Jesus Manifesto, mind you, Khalil is the one who read all of the books. I didn't finish reading a lot of them, but him sharing things with me and me reading here and there, Jesus Manifesto was the one where a light bulb went off, and we realized how much we needed to be connected to a body, and we made a decision immediately.
No, that's probably for you. That's not for me.
Oh, well, that was for me.
I'm gonna tell you my body. I'm gonna tell you where my connection to the body came in at.
Well, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, we need to be connected. You know.
And for me, Jesus Manifesto revealed how much I didn't know the Lord. I knew the religious Jesus. I knew about the Jesus in the past, and I knew about the Jesus in the future. But I wasn't aware of the present Jesus, the living Jesus, and I wasn't putting him central and supreme. He wasn't supreme in my heart. He was secondary.
Yeah.
And so that kind of had me like eyes open, deer in the headlights look.
Yeah.
And right after that, I went into From Eternity to Here.
Oof.
And that was, I think I completed that really quick, but that was prior to a couple weeks before the conference. Because, I remember, it was literally a couple weeks before the conference, because I basically read it. We took a trip for that 4th of July week or weekend down to Mississippi to go visit my in-laws, and I read it then. And I remember being aware that we were flying into Orlando a couple weeks later. I put that book down and was like, man, I need to move heaven and earth to be a part of an organic expression. We were still under the impression that they were everywhere, or that there were a lot more places than we thought. So we were kind of like, do we move back to Atlanta for organic church?
Or do we stay
in Philly for organic church? So
basically, we went to the conference with a mindset of moving.
Yeah.
It's just that we had no idea we would be moving to Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah, we thought we still was in control of where we're moving to.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Yep. So I hear tell of while you were at the conference, you actually left for a few hours and drove over to Gainesville. And,
yes. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was we came to the conference with the understanding that we were going to move. Number one in our priority was Atlanta, Georgia, and I think number two was probably stay in Philly with a group there. And we were under the assumption that we would just meet these saints at the conference. And when we got there, I believe we got there that Thursday night was the first session. That Friday, they were going to have tables segregated, if that's a good word to use at this time, based on geographical, like where you're from, either geographical region or actual cities. So I came down. We had our firstborn was still nursing at that time, so Shea and I were kind of flip-flopping sessions, and we had him with us. And I went to that first session just, hair on fire, man. I'm going right to the Atlanta, Georgia table, and I'm going to meet these saints, and I'm going to let them know who I am and, when we're moving. And I remember walking into the conference room and looking at the tables and didn't see nothing in Georgia.
Nothing in Pennsylvania.
And I was actually sitting at a table with a brother from a D.C. church.
Okay.
And it was just, I was another smack in your face, kind of slight dejection, like, wow, like, man, and I remember thinking to myself prior to coming to the meeting, because of my past experience with institutional church and how hierarchical, pastoral heavy they are in following man in some regards. I remember noticing that Frank was from Gainesville, Florida, and that was on my not to go to list because I didn't want to be seen as following man, quote unquote. But going to the sessions that I went to that day on Friday, and then Shea went to, I think when we had our first lunch break or dinner break that Friday, I fell in love with a group of saints from the church in Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just talking to them, just fellowshipping with them. And I remember me and Shea went to Whole Foods at the time to go have lunch. And I was like, babe, I think I know where we're supposed to move. And she says,
because simultaneously, when I went down during the times when he had the baby, I met a different set of people from Gainesville and felt that same way. But neither one of us knew until we had lunch together.
Okay.
And both were saying we really felt like we know where we're supposed to move. And we counted to 3 and said
we both said Gainesville.
And it was a wrap.
And it was solid. And it was even that much, you know, it was that much greater to know that she connected with a different group of saints than I connected with. And we were just like, man, we looked on the map. We found out that Gainesville was an hour and a half away. And we said, listen.
Yeah, we met a couple that were around the same age, but our children were the same age. And she pressured me to move into her apartment complex. And we drove to Gainesville that Saturday during the break and looked at 2 or 3 different apartment complexes and put our application in for the one where our friends, the Goffs, where they lived, and it was a wrap.
You say your friends. I just want to clarify the friends you had literally just met at the conference.
Yeah.
Yes.
We went there. Listen, I don't know if you could, we're black. And we came to that conference very uncomfortable.
Yes, I'm like, listen.
We don't know who we're meeting. We don't know what type of people are on this wavelength.
It was 5 black people out of maybe 100 people.
Yes.
Yeah. And not that we were looking.
And not that it's about race.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
No.
let's just be real. It's nothing that you have to explain.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
We ain't blind.
so saying that to make a point that it was the spirit of Jesus Christ that drew us to Gainesville.
Yeah.
Come on.
It was the spirit of Jesus Christ that drew us to our friends that we had just met. It was like there was a familiarity there that was beyond anything pertaining to skin color or anything pertaining to interest or anything that would cause for doubt and fear to get in the way of choosing where we felt the Lord leading us. And we were so sure in our spirit, you know. And I remember when we came back from Gainesville, having made the decision to move, I mean, everybody was like, are you sure? You know, even I honestly remember
people from Gainesville.
People from Gainesville.
Milk Mary,
Frank's wife Teresa just say, "Are you sure, honey? Is this what you want to do?" But we
thought we was drinking that juice.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, obviously there was hesitations there because, you know, I'm like, man, it had hit me after the fact that we were the only black people would have been the only black people in the church, and then it hit me after the fact that, you know, this is minute, but I'm like, oh, they don't even have a Whole Foods there, you know? And so, you know, it was just small things that was a kind of scary, you know, once you finally make the decision. But the spirit confirmed first. And so it was our choice to allow the soul life things of the flesh with fear and all of that to get in the way, and we wouldn't, because we were sure that this is what God wanted, and we came down ready to make our decision, you know?
So this was the Lord totally shattering all of your previous experiences and expectations, because you guys were part of this influential mega church in the African American community. And then he's bringing you out of that. A, that's a big deal. And then B, he's bringing you into a church where, okay, now we're going to be the only black people here.
I know, right?
What's this? So Lord, what are you doing? He's saying, I'm drawing you unto me. Yeah. I'm not drawing you unto your own kind, but I'm making you my own kind. Kind of my own kind.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen. So, what were, you know, 1 or 2, 3? I know I know that this is a tough question because there are a gazillion. But what were some of the kind of bigger lessons or things you learned of the Lord in body life in Gainesville?
Yes, it is a lot. It is, seriously. But one of the things that I can highlight is I learned to be less sensitive. Less sensitive in how I relate to people and how people relate to me, especially regarding being offended. You know, really learning how to take the Lord's viewpoint in circumstances where I feel offended and be more confident and responsive by the Lord's life versus insecure and reactive out of my flesh. And that, for me, was a huge thing because I had always been such a sensitive person in my life. And it really wrecked me in my relationships with people. It wrecked me in my marriage early on. And I was like living in my own jail of sensitivity. But being a part of the body and really having a commitment to the Lord when hard times come, there's a lot of freedom that you get, and that I got freedom from being sensitive.
Amen.
For me, I think one of the things that towers over a lot of other things was the experiencing the rich variety of Jesus. It was like prior to our experience in Gainesville, if you're thinking in terms of a Thanksgiving feast, and if we're the only ones coming, we're going to bring one dish. Yeah. And we just get to taste that one dish, the mac and cheese. But,
that's a good dish.
not the turkey, but the
Y'all
mac
are
and
bringing
cheese.
the mac and cheese.
But it's like being a part of the group in Gainesville. It was like, and the mac and cheese was a portion of Christ. We get to have the stuffing, the dressing, the sweet potato pie, not pumpkin pie.
Sweet potato pie.
No, that's a good point because I love the analogy that he's using because with the body, you get to taste things that you would have never said you would ever eat.
Yeah.
We come from eating sweet potato pie. We don't eat pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie.
And so we literally tried pumpkin pie for the first time being around saints who eat pumpkin pie.
Being around the white people.
I mean, technically. But we got to experience that spiritually. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, I jumped in.
We just got to experience on a regular basis Jesus in so much depth. From so many different people who was bringing Christ or who was revealing Christ and displaying him from different vantage points. And it was very refreshing. It is very refreshing. And especially coming from, whereas a ministry, you think in most ministries is one head, one pastor, one person for the most part who speaks. He's just given his portion. But even on that subject matter that he's talking about, Christ is so much more fuller and can be expressed throughout his entire body. And we experienced that. So for me, my Gainesville experience was experiencing different portions of Christ from a multitude of different saints.
Amen. That's awesome.
That is awesome. So, ecclesia, body life, what you guys have been describing a little bit, you found it to be easy or hard?
I would say it's both. And it the best analogy I can describe it to is working out. When you're out of shape and you just start getting back on a regimen of working out, that's when it's really hard. But the results you get from it is beautiful, and it starts to feel good. And even moving forward, as you're hitting your goals through exercising, as you step it up, the pain will still be there, but it's an enjoyable pain because what the results are going to be. And there is rubbing, there is discomfort, anytime you're close with anyone. But at the end of the day, the goal within body life was more of Christ will be revealed through that rubbing. So that's why I say it's both. It's painful, but it's pleasure at the same time.
I can add to that, the beautiful thing about the hard parts and the easy parts of body life, honestly, what I think of is bearing your cross and also learning how to live by the Lord's life and burdens not being heavy on you, you know, and there's a big part of dealing with things in body life where you start to realize that you need more and more of Christ and less of yourself.
Yes.
And you're able to deal with having this renewed freedom in Christ that you never knew about. And then you're also able to deal with some really hard situations that you could easily leave and not deal with and you know, just do your own thing because it's more comfortable. But because of the life of Christ, you're able to walk through it because it's actually him doing it through you.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So what's going on with you guys now?
Yeah.
Girl.
Why you laugh?
Great things is going on with us right now.
Yes and amen.
That is a great response.
We in 2014, Shea, was it 2014? It was painful, but it was also we started to see that the Lord was changing our season and asking us to go back to Philly for various reasons.
From Gainesville.
Gainesville.
And the church was in agreement with this.
Yes.
This was not a decision you made separate from yourselves.
Right.
All right. Separate
The-
from
You walk-
himself.
I mean, separate from yourselves.
You didn't make this in an out-of-body experience.
I was watching myself make this decision.
Anyway,
Separate from
this
the
was a
church.
decision made with the church, and the church was in
Yes.
agreement.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So back in 2014, we relocated from Gainesville, Florida to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and has been here for the last 3 years. However, recently we just felt this. We feel, Shea and I, called to the work of the Lord, and working with churches, planning churches, etc. However, we just don't know what the function of that is going to look like.
Sure.
And we're kind of preparing ourselves to go into a season of being trained, being prepared more, I guess, intensely from the Lord, or more intently from the Lord, in that way. But we're right now in the process of tying up some loose ends here in Philly, getting ready to kind of transition into that next season, which will be being prepared for
whatever the Lord is asking of us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, where we are, we've had a lot of waiting, and some more waiting, and then a little bit more waiting.
And then when we got ready and got our coats on to board the plane, the Lord said, "Hold up, wait a little bit more."
Yeah.
And so we know that the Lord has basically given us the next step of a season of going into a more specific, I guess you can say, preparation of what it would be like for us to work with churches. But we are in a place where we don't know exactly what the next step is going to be. And we feel like the Lord has really just kind of asked us to just rest and watch him be our shepherd. And so we're just living by faith and watching him be our shepherd. And we're going to go wherever he leads as he reveals it. So we don't have all the answers with, you know, what exactly we'll be doing, but we're going to be following him.
Nice. So while you guys were in Philly, the Lord actually opened a door to start meeting with a group there, right?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. That was a huge surprise.
Yes. There was, from the House Church Resource website, a brother. There's been apparently a database of people in the region that's been on this database for years. And I believe there was an updated, a blast that was sent out to him to kind of say that, you know, the Lord may be trying to do something in the Philadelphia area, and to contact Shea and I for further details. And from that blast, I think it was probably about 4 or 5 saints who kind of responded that we started getting together with. And I think we went through Milt's book, Starting Organic Church. We and these are people that these are saints that
have been waiting for 6 years.
Yes, for organic church, for an organic church expression, to be a part of, who kind of felt called outside of the institutional, to kind of go into the deeper things of Christ. And from meeting up with them, we kind of went through several books. I apologize. We went through 2 books with those saints. And from there, the Lord brought us another community. He brought us in contact with another community in the Philadelphia area who's been meeting together for 3 years. And they also desire to be an organic church. And from that, both groups kind of joined and, kind of sought the Lord and
have invited a worker to come and plant.
Kind of sought the Lord, felt like the Lord was asking for both groups to come together. And then from there, they invited a group of workers to come out to visit and to get to know them, to find out, what does the ministry look like of being planted, and had them out for a weekend. And the church, went before the Lord again and felt the need to have workers come out and plant them, and sent out an invitation to be planted, and that was accepted from those saints, from those workers. And right now, God willing, everything will be set for this group here in the Philadelphia area to be planted come August, I believe.
Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Super encouraging to hear about what the Lord's doing.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Guys,
All right.
we cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your day and sharing the Lord with us through your story.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yeah. This was fun, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. Hey, Shea, your hair looks good.
You see me playing with my hair.
I see you playing with your hair.
Don't be trying to put me on blast on radio.
I see. What about my hair? How my hair
Oh,
look?
your hair looks good, brother.
We love you guys.
Hey,
We love you
you.
guys.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing you guys again.
Yep.
Yes.
That's right. Get in your home on wheels and come down here.
That's right.
Yes, boo.
Right, you
I gotta
already
get
know.
it cute first, honey.
You got it. We love you guys,
Love
and y'all
you
take
guys.
it easy.
Love you
All
too.
right.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
That was Shea and KALIL Harrigan, dothesaints.com. Hey, what else can they do at the website, Bridget?
They can register for the conference.
They can.
Yes.
They can listen to past episodes.
They can.
They can ask us questions or try to challenge us to see Christ in movies and music.
They can.
They also can get a link to the hotel that they're staying at and book their room too.
Yes.
They can also support this radio program monetarily.
Awesome. Terrific.
Fantastic.
Praise God.
And may we all surrender and say yes to the Lord's will and His purposes.
Yes.
Yes.
Get over ourselves and get into Him.
No matter what it costs.
Yep.
Yes, He's worth it.
Because He's more valuable than whatever it may cost for us.
Amen.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
His life.
Stir in our hearts.
Yes.
Yes, Lord.
Increase in your
Yes.
people. Until next time, and every time that I ever say that, my name is always R.C.
I'm sticking with Andrew.
I'm going to stay with Tyrone.
Yeah, Allison works for me.
Yep. Carrie.
No, I'm changing mine to Myrtle.
Myrtle.
I knew it wasn't going to work the second time.
That rhymes with turtle.
It does. Myrtle the turtle.
Myrtle. Turtle.
was a good effort.
I know. It's like, really, you're doing it again?
I did it again. And again. And again. We love you.
We love you all.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.